The word emergency signals urgent problems needing immediate action. Former President Donald Trump often used this word to describe issues like the border, trade, and protests. When a president calls something an emergency, it's not just talk. It's a claim of crisis demanding a fast, strong response. This direct approach is central to Trump's political style. By labeling situations as emergencies, he cuts through details and presents himself as the solution. This tactic grabs headlines and shifts debate from policy details to whether there's a crisis at all. For supporters, Trump's declarations show decisive leadership, cutting through bureaucracy to address concerns about immigration, jobs, and safety. They see him as a leader who acts when Washington is too slow. However, critics argue Trump overuses the term emergency to expand his power. They worry he bypasses Congress and undermines the normal lawmaking process. This raises questions about the balance of power in government. Is the president meant to have this much authority? Or does this set a dangerous precedent, weakening democracy and checks and balances? The debate over Trump's use of emergencies is really about who should have the power to decide what's urgent and how far a president can go. It's a question that shapes the future of American democracy. Declaring a national emergency gives the president special powers under laws like the National Emergencies Act of 1976. These powers let the president move money, change regulations, or even deploy the military, actions normally requiring Congress. The intent was to allow quick action in true crises, like disasters or attacks, not for everyday politics. Supporters say Trump used these powers as intended, arguing issues like immigration and trade are real emergencies. They see it as necessary when Congress is gridlocked. Critics, however, warn that using emergencies for political goals sets a dangerous precedent. They fear future presidents could bypass Congress to push their own agendas. This risks making the president too powerful and weakening democracy. Issues like immigration and trade, they argue, should be solved through debate and lawmaking, not by one person declaring a crisis. The use of emergency powers tests the limits of presidential authority. It's a debate about how much power one leader should have in a democracy, and it's a question that affects every American. One of Trump's most controversial emergency declarations was for the border wall. After Congress refused full funding, Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border in 2019. He claimed illegal drugs, crime, and migration were a crisis threatening national safety. This allowed him to redirect billions from military projects to build the wall, bypassing Congress. Supporters saw this as fulfilling a campaign promise and protecting the nation. They believed the situation justified urgent action. Critics argued there was no real emergency and accused Trump of manufacturing a crisis for political gain. Many were upset that military funds were diverted from important projects. Legal challenges followed, with opponents saying Trump overstepped his authority and violated the Constitution. The border wall emergency became a flashpoint over presidential power. It highlighted the tension between urgent action and democratic checks. The outcome set a precedent for how far a president can go in the name of security. Trump also used emergency powers to reshape trade policy, especially with China. He argued that unfair trade practices and reliance on foreign goods threatened national security. Using this argument, he imposed tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other imports. The goal: protect American industries and jobs by making foreign goods more expensive. Supporters saw this as long overdue, believing it would rebuild U.S. manufacturing and ensure security. Critics said tariffs were a tax on Americans, raising prices for consumers and businesses. The trade war hurt farmers and strained relationships with allies. Many economists argued it damaged the U.S. economy more than it helped. The use of emergency powers for trade marked a major shift from decades of free trade policy. It showed how the label of emergency can justify sweeping economic changes. The debate continues over whether these actions protected or harmed American interests. It's a clear example of how emergency powers can reshape the economy. In 2020, protests erupted after George Floyd's death, with some cities experiencing violence. Trump called this a domestic security emergency and threatened to send federal agents and even the military to restore order. He framed the unrest as a threat to national stability, not just local issues. Federal agents were deployed to cities like Portland, often escalating confrontations. Supporters saw Trump's actions as necessary to protect property and restore law and order. They believed local leaders were failing to control violence. Critics, including civil liberties groups, saw this as a massive overreach of presidential power. They argued it violated states' rights and the right to protest. The use of federal force raised alarms about the president using emergency powers for political purposes. The situation sparked debate over the federal government's role in local policing. It highlighted the risks of using emergency declarations to suppress dissent. The law and order emergency remains a controversial chapter in presidential power. The Trump administration changed abortion policy, revoking a rule that required hospitals to perform emergency abortions if a woman's life was at risk. This move created confusion and fear among doctors and patients, especially in states with strict abortion bans. Critics say this creates a new healthcare emergency, as doctors may hesitate to act until a woman is near death. Supporters argue the change respects states' rights and protects unborn life. They see it as correcting federal overreach and letting states decide abortion laws. The result is legal chaos. Hospitals face conflicting state and federal rules. Doctors risk prosecution or lawsuits no matter what they do. Pregnant women in crisis may not get timely care, leading to fear and uncertainty. The debate is about whether emergency powers should protect patient rights or state laws. The policy shift shows how emergency framing can reshape healthcare access. It's a stark example of how political decisions can create real emergencies for ordinary people. The consequences are immediate and deeply personal. Trump declared a national energy emergency to boost fossil fuel production, an unprecedented move. The goal cut regulations and speed up drilling, mining, and pipeline approvals. This came despite the U.S. already being the world's top oil producer and no actual fuel shortage. The declaration gave Trump new powers to bypass environmental protections and fast-track projects. Supporters said it would ensure energy independence, create jobs, and lower prices. They argued regulations were hurting the economy and making the U.S. dependent on foreign energy. Critics warned this could worsen pollution and climate change, with little impact on prices. Environmental groups saw it as a political move to benefit the fossil fuel industry. The order excluded renewables, signaling a shift away from clean energy. The energy emergency highlighted how presidential powers can reshape national priorities. It raised questions about what truly counts as an emergency. The long-term impact on the environment and public health remains uncertain. The Trump administration withdrew from a lawsuit challenging Idaho's strict abortion ban, creating what some call a legal emergency. The lawsuit argued Idaho's law violated federal rules requiring emergency care, including abortion if needed to save a woman's life. By dropping the case, the administration left doctors and patients in legal limbo. A judge temporarily blocked the ban for emergencies, but the future is unclear. Some women have had to leave Idaho for life-saving care, as doctors fear prosecution. Supporters of the withdrawal see it as a win for states' rights and local control over abortion laws. They argue the federal government shouldn't force states to allow abortions. Critics say this move endangers women and undermines federal protections for emergency care. The decision could inspire other states to pass stricter bans, creating a patchwork of laws. The legal battle over emergency abortion care is far from over. The administration's move has left many patients feeling abandoned and afraid. It's a stark example of how presidential decisions can create real emergencies in people's lives. Frequent emergency declarations by presidents change how government works and how people experience politics. For some, it feels like urgent problems are finally being addressed. For others, it raises fears about unchecked power. These actions have real impacts: higher prices from tariffs, delayed military projects, and confusion over emergency healthcare. The bigger issue is the balance of power. Our system relies on checks and balances between Congress, the president, and the courts. When presidents use emergencies to bypass Congress, it tests the limits of democracy. What truly counts as an emergency? Who decides? If one president can declare a border or energy crisis, could another declare a climate or healthcare emergency? The use of emergency powers forces us to consider what kind of leadership we want. Do we want swift, decisive action, or a slower, more deliberate process with debate and compromise? The path we choose will shape the presidency and democracy for years to come. It's a debate about power, accountability, and the future of the country. Ultimately, it's up to citizens to decide what kind of government they want.